You know exactly what you need to do. You know how to do it. You even know how long it will take. But as you sit down to start, an invisible wall suddenly appears. Instead of writing the first sentence or opening the spreadsheet, you find yourself doing the dishes. You organize a drawer that hasn't been opened in a year. You fall down an endless rabbit hole on your phone, all while a quiet, suffocating panic builds in the background because the deadline is getting closer and you are actively choosing to do nothing. If you are a generally capable, intelligent person, this cycle is deeply confusing, and the way the world responds to it only makes it worse. Society has a very simple, very lazy diagnosis for this behavior. They call it laziness. They call it poor time management. They tell you that you lack discipline, they hand you productivity hacks, suggest you buy a new planner, and tell you to just do it. But if you are the one staring at the blank screen, you already know the truth. This has absolutely nothing to do with time management. You know exactly what time it is. Here is what nobody tells you about chronic procrastination, especially in high-functioning people. It is not a flaw in your work ethic. It is an emotional regulation problem. To understand this, you have to look at what is actually happening in your nervous system. When you look at that important task, your brain does not just see a project, it sees a threat. For many intelligent people, self-worth was tied to output from a very young age. You were praised for being smart, for getting things right, for being the one who always figures it out. Over time, your brain secretly rewrote the rules. It decided that if your work is flawed, you are flawed. So that blank document on your screen isn't just a task anymore. It is a psychological minefield. It represents the possibility of failure, the fear of judgment, the crushing weight of perfectionism, or the quiet dread of imposter syndrome. When you sit down to work, your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain, detects this massive spike in negative emotion, and your brain, operating exactly as it was designed to, steps in to protect you from that distress. It initiates an emergency mood repair protocol. It forces you to look away from the threat and seek out something safe, something predictable, something that offers a tiny hit of dopamine to soothe the anxiety. You aren't scrolling on your phone because you are lazy. You are scrolling because your nervous system is trying to rescue you from the emotional pain of your own impossibly high expectations. Procrastination is not avoidance of work. It is avoidance of feeling. But the cruelest part of this phenomenon is the trap it creates. By waiting until the absolute last possible minute, you are actually giving yourself a twisted psychological shield. If you rush through a project at 3 a.m. the night before it's due and it doesn't turn out well, your ego is protected. You can tell yourself, it's only bad because I didn't have enough time. But if you were to start 2 weeks early, pour your entire soul into it, and it still wasn't good enough, that is a level of vulnerability that a perfectionist's brain simply cannot tolerate. The procrastination is a defense mechanism. It protects your potential by making sure you never actually test it. The problem is, this defense mechanism is exhausting. The chronic procrastinator does not actually experience rest. When they are avoiding work, they are not relaxing. They are trapped in a state of high alert guilt, carrying the mental weight of the uncompleted task every single minute of the day. So, how do you escape this? You cannot fix an emotional problem with a scheduling app. You cannot hate yourself into being more productive. In fact, studies show that people who forgive themselves for procrastinating are actually much less likely to procrastinate on their next task. Guilt just creates more negative emotion, which requires more procrastination to soothe. To break the cycle, you have to lower the emotional stakes. You have to separate your fundamental value as a human being from the output of your work. You have to give yourself permission to do a terrible, ugly, embarrassing first draft. You have to realize that the anxiety of starting is almost always worse than the reality of doing. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are just a person whose mind cares so deeply about doing things perfectly that it has terrified itself into doing nothing at all. The moment you realize the task is just a task and not a verdict on your worth, the invisible wall falls down, and you can finally just begin.